Typical ghetto trash-thinking rules don't apply to her. Officer Derek Matthews snatched the paperwork from Kesha Williams's hands. He waved it above her head like a trophy. The pregnant woman reached up desperately, but Matthews jerked it higher. "Look, everyone. Another baby mama scamming the system." He slammed the papers on the floor. His boot stepped on her traffic citation. "Bet she's here lying about some sob story." Kesha bent down to gather her scattered documents. Matthews blocked her path with his leg. "Stay down there where you belong." His radio crackled as he keyed the microphone. "We got ourselves a real piece of work here." 20 people watched in stunned silence. Kesha's diamond wedding ring sparkled as she reached for her papers. Her expensive Hermes purse sat unnoticed. Federal court credentials fell from her folder. Matthews kicked them aside. Her phone lit up. "Marcus, federal case running late, love you." Have you ever seen a bully pick the wrong target? Kesha Williams had never imagined her morning would start like this. Just 3 hours earlier, she was teaching second graders at Lincoln Elementary, reading them stories about courage and kindness. Her students called her Mrs. K and drew pictures of her growing baby bump during art time. The traffic citation was supposed to be simple. Her car registration had expired during a particularly difficult week of pregnancy. Morning sickness had kept her home for days. Multiple doctor visits for high-risk pregnancy complications consumed her time. She had renewed everything immediately. Insurance, registration, inspection. All current, all legal. Her husband Marcus often joked about her organizational skills. "You keep better files than my law clerks," he would say, kissing her forehead before leaving for work each morning. Their downtown Chicago apartment was immaculate. Color-coded folders lined his home office shelves. Legal briefs and court documents organized by date and priority. This morning, Marcus had left early for a high-profile federal case. Something about civil rights violations and police misconduct. He seemed particularly focused on this one. "Some officers think their badge gives them permission to treat people like garbage," he had said over breakfast. "Today we change that." Kesha checked her watch, a wedding gift from Marcus's colleagues at the federal district court. The Cartier timepiece caught the harsh courthouse lighting. She remembered their wedding day 3 years ago. 200 guests, including half the federal judiciary. Marcus looked magnificent in his formal wear. She wore her grandmother's pearls and carried white roses. Officer Derek Matthews had been watching her for 20 minutes. He studied every movement, every gesture. Something about her bothered him. Maybe it was her quiet confidence. Maybe it was the way she held herself with dignity despite being publicly humiliated. Most people he targeted would cower, argue, or fight back. She simply collected her papers and maintained her composure. Matthews had 15 years on the force. 15 years of looking at people and deciding their worth in 30 seconds. 15 years of internal affairs complaints that mysteriously disappeared. 15 years of targeting anyone who looked like they didn't belong in his courthouse. His partner, Officer Rodriguez, had stopped watching the show. Fresh out of the academy, Rodriguez joined the force to serve his community. The behavior he witnessed daily from Matthews made his stomach turn, but speaking up meant career suicide. Matthews had connections. Matthews had seniority. Matthews had the ear of certain supervisors who shared his views. The courthouse waiting room filled with Thursday morning regulars, traffic violations mostly, a few domestic disputes, several eviction hearings. Matthews surveyed his domain like a king reviewing his subjects, poor people, or working-class people. People who reminded him why he became a cop in the first place, to maintain order, to keep certain types in their place. Kesha's phone buzzed again. A text from her principal. "How's the court thing going? Kids keep asking when Mrs. K is coming back." She smiled despite everything. Those children were her world. Teaching was her calling. She had a master's degree in elementary education from Northwestern. She spoke 3 languages fluently. She volunteered at literacy programs on weekends. Another text appeared from her sister Jennifer. "Marcus called me worried. Said you sounded upset on the phone earlier. Is everything okay?" Kesha hadn't mentioned the harassment to anyone yet. She preferred handling problems quietly, professionally. But something about Matthews felt different, dangerous. Court clerk Sandra Lopez noticed the tension from her desk. 22 years working in municipal court taught her to recognize trouble. She had seen Matthews operate before. Always the same pattern. Pick a target who seemed vulnerable, make a show of authority. Humiliate them publicly. Most victims never complained. They just wanted to pay their fines and disappear. But this woman seemed different. Sandra noticed the expensive handbag, the quality of her clothing, the way she carried herself. This wasn't someone who would be easily intimidated. Sandra reached for her phone discreetly. Courthouse security should know about situations like this. Matthews circled back toward Kesha like a predator sizing up prey. His radio squawked with routine dispatch calls. Traffic stops on the south side. Domestic disturbance in Rogers Park. Nothing requiring his attention. His shift was light today, giving him plenty of time to focus on his favorite activity, reminding certain people who were in charge. Kesha organized her paperwork methodically. Registration renewal dated 3 weeks ago. Insurance cards current through next year. Vehicle inspection passed with no violations. Everything is properly notarized and filed. She even brought bank statements proving financial responsibility. Her teaching salary was public record, solid middle-class income with excellent benefits. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was probably one of the most law-abiding citizens in the building. Never even a parking ticket before this registration issue. She voted in every election, served on parent-teacher committees, donated to police benevolent funds. Her taxes helped pay Matthews' salary. Her stomach tightened with stress. The baby kicked, responding to her elevated heart rate. She breathed deeply, remembering the prenatal yoga techniques Marcus had practiced with her. "Stay calm for the little one," she whispered to herself. Matthews positioned himself directly in her line of sight. He wanted her to see him watching, wanted her to feel the weight of his authority. Most people would look away, but Kesha met his gaze steadily. She had nothing to hide, nothing to apologize for. This only angered Matthews more. In his experience, respect meant fear. Compliance meant submission. This woman's quiet dignity felt like defiance. Her refusal to be intimidated challenged everything he believed about power and control. He keyed his radio again, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Unit 2847 requesting additional background checks on courthouse visitors. Suspicious behavior, possible outstanding warrants." The lie came easily. He had told similar lies hundreds of times before. Kesha's phone displayed another message from Marcus. "Federal case going longer than expected. The judge is really throwing the book at some dirty cops today. Justice feels good. Love you and little one." She smiled, her first genuine smile since arriving. Marcus was her anchor, her safe harbor. Whatever happened here, she knew he would support her completely. Their love had weathered every storm. This would be no different. But Matthews had no idea he was about to create the biggest storm of his career. "Kesha Williams, docket number 2847 TC, the bailiff called out. The municipal courtroom was packed with Thursday morning cases. Traffic violations, small claims, minor infractions. Judge Peterson, a tired-looking man in his 60s, reviewed the docket with mechanical efficiency. Kesha stood carefully, her 7-month pregnancy making quick movements difficult. She gathered her organized paperwork and walked toward the defendant's table. Her heels clicked softly on the worn courthouse floor. Behind her, Officer Matthews rose from his seat in the gallery. "Your Honor," Kesha began respectfully, "I'm here regarding citation number TC4471 for expired vehicle registration. I have documentation showing that my registration was renewed immediately after the citation was issued." She placed her papers on the table, organizing them clearly for the judge's review. Judge Peterson barely looked up. "Expired registration, 30 days or less. Standard fine is $250 plus court costs. Do you wish to pay today or set up a payment plan?" "Your Honor, if I may explain the circumstances," Kesha started. "Objection!" Matthews's voice boomed from behind her. Judge Peterson looked confused. Officer Matthews, this isn't a trial. There are no objections in traffic court. Matthews strode forward uninvited, his heavy boots echoing through the suddenly silent courtroom. Your Honor, I issued this citation personally. I've been observing this defendant this morning, and I have serious concerns about her credibility. Kesha turned to face him, her expression remaining calm despite the shock. Officer, I simply want to show that I corrected the violation immediately. Don't interrupt me when I'm speaking to the judge, Matthews snapped, moving closer to her. Your Honor, I've seen this exact pattern before. These people always have some sob story, some excuse. She's probably driving without insurance, too. Officer Matthews, Judge Peterson said cautiously, the citation is only for registration. Do you have evidence of additional violations? Matthews smiled coldly. Your Honor, in my 15 years of experience, when someone shows up with a folder full of papers, they're usually trying to hide something. I'd like to request a full investigation into this defendant's background. Kesha's hands tightened on her paperwork. The baby kicked hard, responding to her stress. Your Honor, I'm a public school teacher. My record is completely clean. I have all the proper documentation right here. A teacher? Matthews laughed loudly. Right, and I'm the Pope. Your Honor, I suggest we search her purse. See what she's really carrying around. The courtroom fell completely silent. 30 people held their breath. This was unprecedented. Traffic court was supposed to be routine, boring, quick. Judge Peterson looked uncomfortable. Officer Matthews, that seems excessive for a simple registration violation. Your Honor, she's clearly agitated. Look at her shaking. That's classic drug user behavior. Pregnant drug users are the worst kind, endangering their unborn children. Matthews stepped even closer to Kesha. Ma'am, are you currently under the influence of any controlled substances? Kesha's voice remained steady despite her racing heart. Officer Matthews, I am not using any drugs. I'm shaking because you are intimidating me in front of this entire courtroom for no legal reason. There she goes, playing the victim card, Matthews announced to the room. Your Honor, I deal with this manipulation every day. She's probably here illegally, too. I bet if we run her ID through federal databases, we'll find some interesting results. Court clerk Sandra Lopez watched in horror from her desk. She had never seen such blatant harassment in her courtroom. Her hand hovered over the phone, wondering if she should call courthouse security. Matthews keyed his radio loudly. Unit 2847 requesting Immigration and Customs backup to Municipal Courtroom 3. Possible undocumented individual attempting to defraud the court system. Officer Matthews. Judge Peterson finally found his voice. That is completely inappropriate. This woman has provided identification and appears to be handling this matter properly. Your Honor, with respect, you don't deal with criminals every day like I do. This woman is exhibiting every sign of someone trying to scam the system. I strongly recommend we detain her for further questioning. Kesha's phone buzzed in her purse. The screen lit up clearly. Marcus, how's court going? This police brutality case is getting intense. About to render a verdict. She glanced at the phone, then back at Matthews. For a split second, something flickered across her face. Not fear, but something else. Recognition, maybe, or irony. Matthews noticed her checking the phone. Your Honor, she's not even paying attention to these proceedings. Probably texting her dealer or her pimp. The words hung in the air like poison. Even Judge Peterson looked shocked at the escalation. Matthews wasn't finished. The courtroom's stunned silence only fueled his confidence. He had an audience now, 30 witnesses to his authority. This was his stage, his moment to demonstrate real police power. Your Honor, I'm going to need this defendant to stand up and face the wall, Matthews commanded, his hand moving toward his handcuffs. Standard search position. Kesha remained seated, her voice calm but firm. Officer Matthews, I'm 7 months pregnant. I'm not standing against any wall for a traffic violation. Resisting arrest! Matthews shouted, loud enough for the entire courthouse to hear. Your Honor, she just refused a direct lawful order from a police officer. Judge Peterson looked panicked. Officer Matthews, there's no arrest warrant here. This is traffic court, not criminal. Judge, when a defendant refuses to comply with police instructions, that constitutes obstruction of justice. Matthews pulled out his handcuffs, the metal clinking ominously. Ma'am, stand up right now or I will physically remove you from that chair. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Several people pulled out phones to record. Matthews noticed immediately. Put those phones away, he barked at the gallery. Recording in a courtroom is illegal. I'll arrest anyone who doesn't comply immediately. Court clerk Sandra Lopez knew this was a lie. Public court proceedings could be recorded. But she also knew most people wouldn't challenge a police officer's direct order. She watched helplessly as citizens lowered their phones in fear. Kesha slowly stood up, her hands protectively cradling her belly. Officer Matthews, I am complying with your request, but I want everyone here to witness that I am being cooperative and respectful. Don't tell me what people need to witness, Matthews snarled, moving behind her. Hands on the defendant's table. Spread your legs apart. Absolutely not, Kesha said firmly. I will not submit to a physical search for a traffic violation. Especially not while pregnant. Matthews grabbed her wrist roughly. You don't get to choose what happens here. I'm a sworn police officer, and you're going to do exactly what I tell you. You're hurting me, Kesha said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent room. Everyone can see that you're using excessive force on a pregnant woman. Shut up about being pregnant. Matthews yanked her arm harder. You think that gives you special privileges? I've arrested plenty of pregnant criminals. Drug dealers love hiding behind pregnancy. Judge Peterson finally stood up. Officer Matthews, I must insist that you— Judge, sit down. Matthews cut him off. This is a police matter now. Criminal obstruction trumps traffic court. The judge actually sat back down. 30 years on the bench, and he was being ordered around by a patrol officer. But Matthews had that look in his eyes, the dangerous look of someone who had crossed a line and wasn't coming back. Matthews keyed his radio again. Unit 2847 requesting immediate backup at Municipal Courtroom 3. The suspect is resisting arrest and may be armed. I am not armed, Kesha protested. Officer Matthews, you are lying on your police radio. Are you calling me a liar? Matthews's face reddened with rage. Your Honor, add perjury to her charges. She just accused a police officer of filing a false report. Kesha's phone buzzed again. The screen showed another text from Marcus. Dirty cops just got 15 years federal prison. Justice served. Can't wait to hear about your boring traffic court. Love you. Matthews saw the phone light up. What did I tell you about that phone? Hand it over right now. This is my personal property, Kesha said, clutching the phone protectively. You have no legal right to confiscate it. Everything's evidence now. Matthews lunged for the phone. You could be coordinating with accomplices. Kesha pulled the phone away, but Matthews grabbed her wrist again, twisting it painfully. The phone clattered to the floor. As it fell, the screen remained visible to several people in the front row. They could clearly see the contact name, Marcus, and part of the message about federal prison sentences. Assault on a police officer! Matthews screamed as Kesha tried to protect her phone. She just attacked me while I was confiscating evidence. I did not attack you. Kesha's composure finally cracked. You grabbed my phone illegally. Your Honor, I want this woman charged with assault, battery, obstruction of justice, resisting arrest, and possession of stolen property. Matthews picked up her expensive purse. This bag is clearly beyond her means. Probably stolen. He dumped the contents across the defendant's table, expensive makeup scattered everywhere, credit cards in Kesha's name, a teacher's ID badge from Lincoln Elementary, car keys to a late-model BMW, A thick envelope marked Northwestern University Master's Degree Certificate. Matthews ignored all of it. Your Honor, I also suspect drug possession. I'm going to need to search every item here for contraband. From the envelope, he pulled out Kesha's teaching credentials. Advanced degree in elementary education, Phi Beta Kappa honors, Dean's List recognition. He glanced at them briefly, then tossed them aside dismissively. Fake documents, he announced. Your Honor, identity theft is a federal crime. This woman is impersonating a teacher. Court clerk Sandra couldn't stay silent anymore. Officer Matthews, those appear to be legitimate educational credentials. Ma'am, I didn't ask for your opinion. Matthews cut her off sharply. Stick to your clerical duties and let real law enforcement handle this. Sandra's face burned with embarrassment, but she reached for her phone anyway. Courthouse security needed to know about this situation immediately. Matthews continued rifling through Kesha's belongings. He found her car registration, current and valid, exactly as she had claimed. Her insurance cards, comprehensive coverage, no lapses. Her driver's license, clean record, proper address. But instead of acknowledging his error, Matthews doubled down. Your Honor, these documents are all forgeries. Too convenient, too perfect, too... Real criminals always have perfect fake papers. Kesha watched in disbelief as Matthews destroyed her credibility with pure fiction. Officer Matthews, you can verify every one of those documents in your police database. Everything is legitimate. Don't tell me how to do my job, Matthews snapped. I've been catching criminals like you for 15 years. Her phone, still on the floor, buzzed with another message. This time, several people in the front row could see the screen clearly. Marcus, federal courthouse is buzzing about today's conviction. These corrupt cops picked the wrong judge to mess with. See you tonight, beautiful. An elderly man in the front row squinted at the phone screen. His eyes widened as he read the message. He nudged his wife and whispered something in her ear. She looked shocked. Matthews was too focused on his performance to notice the growing murmurs in the gallery. He held up Kesha's wallet triumphantly. Your Honor, I found multiple credit cards here, probably stolen identities. We need to run every single one through federal databases. Those are my credit cards, Kesha said wearily. My name is on every single one. Right. Because criminals never steal credit cards, Matthews laughed mockingly. Your Honor, I've seen this scam 100 times. Pregnant women make perfect thieves because people feel sorry for them. Judge Peterson looked around the courtroom helplessly. The situation had spiraled completely beyond his control. Officer Matthews, perhaps we should... The courtroom doors suddenly burst open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the chamber, but Matthews was too engaged in his systematic destruction of Kesha's character to notice. Your Honor, Matthews continued loudly, I recommend we hold this defendant without bail until federal authorities can investigate her for identity theft, document fraud, and organized crime connections. The footsteps grew closer. Several people in this gallery turned toward the sound. Their expressions began to change from horror to confusion to something else entirely. But Matthews kept talking, oblivious to the shifting energy in the room. Your Honor, I want this criminal held in federal custody immediately, Matthews declared, still oblivious to the approaching footsteps. She's clearly part of a larger identity theft operation, probably trafficking stolen documents across state lines. The heavy footsteps stopped directly behind him. Matthews continued his rant, savoring his moment of absolute authority. He was performing now, demonstrating his power to the entire courtroom. In fact, Your Honor, I think we should call Child Protective Services right now. This woman shouldn't be raising a child when she's obviously a career criminal. Who knows what kind of environment she'll create for that baby? Matthews gestured dramatically toward Kesha. Look at her. Expensive clothes, expensive purse, but can't pay simple traffic fines on time. Classic signs of criminal behavior. She's probably running drugs to afford all this fancy stuff. Officer Matthews. The voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. Deep, authoritative, deadly calm. Matthews froze mid-sentence. Something about that voice made his blood run cold. It carried the weight of absolute authority, not the borrowed authority of a badge, but real power. He turned around slowly, his confident smirk fading. Standing directly behind him was a tall black man in an immaculate federal judge's robe. The gold braiding caught the courtroom lights, announcing his rank to everyone present. Behind him stood two federal bailiffs, their badges gleaming, their expressions serious. The entire courtroom fell into absolute silence. Matthews's brain struggled to process what he was seeing. Federal judges didn't just walk into municipal court. Federal bailiffs didn't show up for traffic violations. This was impossible. All rise for the Honorable Judge Marcus Williams, United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois. The bailiff's voice echoed through the chamber with formal authority. Everyone in the courtroom stood immediately, everyone except Matthews, who remained frozen in place, his mouth hanging open like a fish gasping for air. Judge Peterson shot to his feet so fast he knocked over his water glass. Water spilled across his desk as he scrambled to show proper respect. Your Honor, we weren't expecting... This is a municipal court. I don't understand. Judge Marcus Williams stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Matthews. His presence filled the room completely. This was a man accustomed to command, to respect, to deference from everyone around him. Officer Matthews, isn't it? Badge number 2847? Matthews's face went from red to white in seconds. His hand trembled as he tried to straighten his uniform, suddenly aware of how wrinkled and unprofessional he looked. Yes, sir, Your Honor, sir. The stammering was pathetic. 30 seconds ago, Matthews had been the king of this courtroom. Now he couldn't even form complete sentences. I believe you know my wife. The words hit the courtroom like a physical blow. The silence that followed was deafening. Gasps erupted from the gallery. Several people audibly said, "Oh my God." Someone whispered, "Holy shit." Court clerk Sandra Lopez covered her mouth in shock, her eyes wide with disbelief. The elderly man in the front row who had read Kesha's phone messages grabbed his wife's arm. I told you, he whispered urgently. I told you those texts were from a judge. Matthew's world tilted on its axis. His brain refused to accept what he was hearing. This couldn't be happening. This black woman, this welfare queen, this criminal, couldn't possibly be married to a federal judge. Marcus walked past Matthews toward Kesha, and his entire demeanor transformed. The judicial authority remained, but now it was mixed with tender concern, protective love, and barely contained rage at seeing his wife hurt. Darling, are you all right? Are you hurt? Did he touch you? Kesha's eyes filled with tears of relief. The strength she had maintained throughout the ordeal finally cracked, and she allowed herself to show vulnerability. Marcus, he grabbed my wrist. He twisted it. He called me a criminal, a drug dealer, a baby mama. He said I was scamming the system. Marcus gently took her hand, examining her wrist where red marks were clearly visible. His jaw tightened as he saw the finger-shaped bruises forming on her dark skin. When he looked back at Matthews, his eyes were ice cold. Officer Matthews, you physically assaulted my pregnant wife during a routine traffic hearing? Matthews stammered incoherently, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. I didn't. She was resisting. I had no way to know. She didn't tell me. You had no way to know what, officer? That she deserved basic human dignity? That pregnant women shouldn't be manhandled? That citizens have constitutional rights regardless of their skin color? The courtroom was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Marcus moved to the scattered contents of Kesha's purse, still spread across the defendant's table where Matthews had dumped them. Let's examine the evidence you found of my wife's criminal activity. Marcus picked up her Northwestern University diploma, holding it high for everyone to see. Master's degree in elementary education, magna cum laude, clearly suspicious behavior. He held up her teacher's ID badge. Lincoln Elementary School, where she's been Teacher of the Year 3 consecutive times. Obviously fraudulent credentials. Marcus lifted her car registration. Current vehicle registration, properly renewed 3 weeks ago, exactly as she told you. Definitely criminal behavior. Each item he displayed made Matthews look more foolish, more prejudiced, more completely wrong about everything. Matthews tried to speak, his voice cracking. Your Honor, I was just doing my job. I was following standard procedure. Your job? Marcus's voice rose slightly, filling the courtroom with authority. Your job is to protect and serve, not to terrorize pregnant women in traffic court. Your job is to uphold the law, not to abuse it. Marcus picked up Kesha's phone from the floor. The screen still showed their text conversation clearly. Officer Matthews, were you planning to confiscate my wife's phone as evidence of criminal activity? The phone could have contained, she could have been coordinating with. It contains messages from her husband, me, a federal judge, telling her about a police brutality case I just concluded. 12 officers convicted of civil rights violations, sentenced to federal prison this morning. The irony hung in the air like poison. Matthews's face went completely pale as the full implications hit him. Several people in the gallery began whispering excitedly, pointing at Matthews, shaking their heads in disbelief. Marcus addressed the room formally, his voice carrying the weight of his office. For the record, my name is Marcus Williams. I serve as a United States District Judge for the Northern District of Illinois. I was appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the United States Senate. This morning I concluded a major federal case involving police officers who abused their authority against innocent citizens. He paused, letting that sink in completely. And this afternoon, I find my pregnant wife being physically assaulted and publicly humiliated by another officer who apparently believes his badge gives him unlimited power over people he considers beneath him. Judge Peterson found his voice, still trembling with shock. Your Honor, I had no idea. Officer Matthews was handling this as a potential criminal matter? I was just following his lead. A criminal matter? Marcus's eyebrows rose dangerously. Judge Peterson, what crime was my wife allegedly committing? Having expired registration that she immediately renewed? Being pregnant while black? Carrying identification that proves she's exactly who she says she is? Matthews tried one last desperate defense, his voice weak and unconvincing. Your Honor, she was acting suspicious. She wouldn't comply with my orders. She was being difficult. Officer Matthews, Marcus interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. I want you to explain to this courtroom exactly what my wife did that was suspicious. Take your time. Be specific. Matthews opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked around the room desperately, seeking some support, some validation. He found none. The silence stretched for a full minute. He had no answer, because there was no answer. I'll tell you what she did, Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. She came to court properly dressed, with all required documentation, ready to pay a fine for a violation she had already corrected. She spoke respectfully to the judge and to you. She complied with every legal request you made. Marcus walked closer to Matthews, who instinctively stepped backward. What she didn't do was grovel. She didn't bow her head and shuffle her feet and call you sir every other word. She didn't act subservient. She treated you like an equal human being instead of a master. And that's what really bothered you, isn't it? The accuracy of the assessment hit Matthews like a physical blow. That was exactly what had bothered him. Her dignity, her refusal to be intimidated, her quiet confidence, her obvious education and class, everything that challenged his worldview. Officer Matthews, Marcus continued, do you realize you just committed multiple federal crimes in front of 30 witnesses and security cameras? Matthews's knees actually buckled slightly. He grabbed the table for support. Federal crimes? Assault under color of authority, violation of civil rights under federal statute, false imprisonment, perjury on official police communications, intimidation of a witness. Marcus counted them off on his fingers. Each one carries significant federal prison time. And I should know. I just sentenced 12 officers for exactly these crimes. The federal bailiffs stepped forward slightly. Not threatening, just ready, just making their presence known. Marcus pulled out his own phone. Captain Rodriguez? This is Judge Marcus Williams, Federal District Court. I need you in Municipal Courtroom 3 immediately. One of your officers just committed multiple federal felonies against my pregnant wife. Matthews could hear the voice on the other end clearly. Jesus Christ, Judge Williams. I'll be right there. Which officer? Derek Matthews, badge 2847. Oh, hell. Judge, I am so sorry. I'll be there in 5 minutes with Internal Affairs. Marcus hung up and looked at Matthews with something approaching pity. Officer Matthews, you picked the wrong woman to humiliate. But more importantly, you picked the wrong profession if you think your badge gives you permission to abuse innocent people. Court Clerk Sandra finally found her courage. Your Honor, I witnessed everything from the beginning. Officer Matthews was completely out of line. I have security footage of the entire incident. Thank you, Miss Lopez. That footage will be crucial evidence in the federal investigation. Matthews slumped into a chair, his career flashing before his eyes. 15 years of aggressive policing. 15 years of targeting people who couldn't fight back. 15 years of complaints that were mysteriously buried. And today, finally, he had chosen the wrong target, the wrong woman, the wrong family, the wrong day to let his prejudices run wild. Captain James Rodriguez burst through the courtroom doors like a man facing his worst nightmare. 27 years on the force, and he had never been summoned by a federal judge to deal with one of his officers. Behind him walked Lieutenant Sarah Carter from Internal Affairs, her tablet already recording everything. Judge Williams, Captain Rodriguez called out, slightly out of breath. I came as soon as I could. What exactly happened here? Marcus remained standing beside Kesha, his protective stance unmistakable. Captain Rodriguez, your officer Matthews just committed multiple federal felonies against my pregnant wife during a routine traffic hearing. Rodriguez's eyes swept the scene. Matthews slumped in a chair, looking defeated. Kesha's belongings scattered across the defendant's table, visible marks on her wrist. 30 witnesses stared in shocked silence. Matthews, Rodriguez's voice cut like steel. Stand up. Right now. Matthews struggled to his feet, his uniform wrinkled, his confidence completely shattered. The man who had terrorized Kesha an hour ago now looked pathetic and small. Officer Matthews, you are suspended without pay, effective immediately pending a full investigation. Rodriguez's words echoed through the silent courtroom. Badges and weapons. Now. Matthews fumbled with his badge, his hands shaking. The metal pin had been his identity for 15 years. Now it felt like burning metal as he handed it over. Gun 2, Matthews. You know the drill. The service weapon followed. Matthews had drawn that gun dozens of times to intimidate people. Now surrendering it felt like losing a limb. Lieutenant Carter stepped forward with her tablet. Officer Matthews, I'm placing you under administrative investigation for civil rights violations, assault under color of authority, false imprisonment, and filing false police reports. You have the right to union representation during questioning. Internal Affairs will handle the departmental charges, Captain Rodriguez announced to the room. But Judge Williams, I understand this may also involve federal prosecution. Marcus nodded grimly. I've already contacted the FBI Civil Rights Division. Special Agent Morrison will be here within the hour to begin the federal investigation. Matthews's face went completely white. FBI involvement meant this was career-ending. It meant possible federal prison time. It meant everything he had worked for was gone. Judge Peterson finally found his voice. Your Honor, regarding the original traffic citation, dismissed, Marcus said firmly. All charges against my wife are dismissed with prejudice. She will face no penalties, no fines, no court costs. The record will show that Officer Matthews' conduct was completely without merit. Kesha squeezed Marcus's hand gratefully. The nightmare was finally ending. Her baby kicked gently, responding to her lowered stress levels. Court clerk Sandra Lopez approached cautiously. "Your Honor, I have the complete security footage from this morning. Everything from when Mrs. Williams first entered the building until now." "Excellent. Please preserve all footage and provide copies to both Internal Affairs and the FBI," Marcus instructed. Sandra nodded eagerly. After witnessing Matthew's behavior for months, she was thrilled to finally see justice served. Captain Rodriguez addressed the gallery. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Chicago Police Department, I want to apologize for what you witnessed today. This behavior does not represent our values or our training." An elderly black man in the front row stood up slowly. "Captain, with respect, we've seen this behavior before. This officer has a reputation in our community. Sir, if you've witnessed similar incidents, please speak with Lieutenant Carter. We need to hear from every victim." The man nodded. "There's plenty of us who could tell stories about Officer Matthews." Marcus felt his anger rising again. "Captain Rodriguez, how many complaints has Matthews generated over his career?" Rodriguez consulted his phone. "Judge Williams, I'm seeing 14 formal complaints in 15 years, plus numerous informal complaints that were handled internally." "Handled internally," Marcus repeated coldly, while he continued terrorizing innocent citizens. The captain's face reddened with embarrassment. "Your Honor, I won't make excuses. The system failed. We failed." Officer Rodriguez, Matthews's former partner, finally spoke up from the back of the room. "Captain, I tried to report his behavior multiple times. My complaints were always buried." Lieutenant Carter turned to the young officer. "Officer Rodriguez, I need you to file a formal statement immediately. Everything you've witnessed." "Yes, ma'am. There's a lot to document." Matthews sat in stunned silence, watching his world collapse around him. Colleagues were abandoning him. Witnesses were coming forward. His reign of terror was ending. Marcus pulled out his phone again. "Dr. Patterson, this is Marcus Williams. My wife just experienced a traumatic incident involving police harassment. Can you see her today to check on the baby?" Kesha touched his arm. "Marcus, I think we're okay. The baby's moving normally. We're seeing the doctor anyway. I'm not taking any chances." Captain Rodriguez approached them respectfully. "Judge Williams, Mrs. Williams, I want to personally ensure this never happens again. We're implementing immediate policy changes." "What kind of changes?" Marcus demanded. "Mandatory body cameras for all courthouse duty, cultural sensitivity training for every officer, new complaint procedures that bypass supervisors, and Matthews will never work in law enforcement again." Lieutenant Carter added, "Judge Williams, we're also reviewing every case Matthews was involved with. There may be wrongful convictions based on his testimony." Marcus nodded approvingly. "That's a good start. But Captain, this isn't just about Matthews. This is about a culture that allowed him to operate for 15 years. "You're absolutely right, Your Honor. We're conducting a department-wide review of bias incidents and complaint handling. The federal bailiffs approached Matthews. Sir, you need to come with us for questioning." Matthews looked around desperately for support. He found none. Even his union representative, who had arrived minutes earlier, looked disgusted by the evidence. "Officer Matthews," the union rep said quietly, "I strongly advise you to cooperate fully with all investigations." This is beyond what the union can protect. As Matthews was escorted out, the courtroom erupted in whispers and conversations. People pulled out phones to call friends and family. The story was already spreading. Kesha watched him leave and felt no satisfaction, only sadness. "Marcus, he destroyed his own life today." "No, sweetheart. He destroyed his life over 15 years of choices. Today just revealed what he really was." Judge Peterson cleared his throat. "Your Honor, I owe you and Mrs. Williams an apology as well. I should have stopped this much earlier." Marcus studied the municipal judge carefully. "Judge Peterson, You were intimidated by a patrol officer in your own courtroom. That suggests systemic problems beyond just Matthews. You're right, Your Honor. Right. I've scheduled meetings with court administration to address security and authority issues. Sandra Lopez approached with paperwork. Judge Williams, I've compiled incident reports going back 2 years. Matthews has been problematic since day one. Thank you, Sandra. Your courage today made a real difference. The courtroom began to empty, but the impact of what happened would spread far beyond these walls. By evening, the story would be on local news. By tomorrow, it will be in the national headlines. Marcus helped Kesha gather her belongings, treating each item with the respect Matthews had denied them. Ready to go home? He asked gently. More than ready, she smiled. But Marcus, what happens now? Now we make sure this never happens to anyone else. 3 months later, Kesha Williams stood before a packed auditorium at Northwestern University Law School. Her 8-month pregnant silhouette was unmistakable as she approached the podium. The audience, law students, professors, civil rights advocates, and community leaders, rose in sustained applause. Thank you, she said warmly, waiting for the crowd to settle. I'm here today, not as a victim, but as a voice for change. The story of what happened in Municipal Courtroom 3 had indeed become national news. Video footage from courthouse security cameras had been viewed millions of times online. The hashtag Justice for Kesha had trended for weeks. When Officer Matthews targeted me that morning, he saw what he expected to see, a black woman he could intimidate without consequences. He never imagined that his prejudices would be exposed on such a public stage. She paused, her hand resting on her belly. But this story isn't really about me. It's about every person who has been judged by their appearance, dismissed because of their race, or silenced because they seemed powerless. In the audience, Marcus watched his wife with enormous pride. Federal prosecutors had secured a conviction against Matthews for civil rights violations. He was now serving 4 years in federal prison. 12 other officers from various incidents had also been prosecuted based on the evidence that emerged. The real heroes of that day weren't my husband and me, Kesha continued. They were court clerk Sandra Lopez, who preserved the evidence. Officer Rodriguez, who finally spoke up about what he had witnessed. The elderly gentleman who read my phone messages and understood their significance. Sandra Lopez sat in the front row, beaming. After her courageous testimony, she had been promoted to senior court administrator and was now leading courthouse reform initiatives across Illinois. Officer Matthews had a choice that morning. He could have treated me with basic human dignity. He could have processed my paperwork professionally. He could have acknowledged that my registration violation was already resolved. Kesha's voice grew stronger. Instead, he chose to let his prejudices control his actions. He chose to abuse his authority. He chose to humiliate me publicly because he thought I was powerless. The audience hung on every word. This wasn't just a speech. It was a masterclass in grace under pressure, in maintaining dignity while demanding justice. But here's what Officer Matthews didn't understand. Power isn't about a badge or a uniform or the ability to intimidate others. Real power comes from character, from education, from the support of people who love you, and from refusing to be diminished by someone else's hatred. Marcus felt his eyes water. His wife had transformed a traumatic experience into a platform for positive change. Today, Matthew sits in federal prison, his career destroyed, his reputation ruined. But I don't take satisfaction in his punishment. I take satisfaction in the changes his actions have sparked. She gestured to a presentation screen showing statistics. Since our story became public, civilian complaints against police officers have increased by 300%. Not because misconduct has increased, but because people now believe their voices will be heard. The numbers were impressive. Body camera usage in courthouses had become standard across 12 states. Cultural bias training was now mandatory for law enforcement in over 200 jurisdictions. Officer Rodriguez, who witnessed Matthews' behavior for months, now leads diversity training at the Chicago Police Academy. Judge Peterson has implemented new protocols ensuring that judicial authority cannot be undermined by intimidation. Kesha smiled warmly. And in 2 weeks, Marcus and I will welcome our daughter into this world. Her name is Hope, because that's what this experience has given us. I hope that speaking truth to power matters. I hope that justice can prevail. I hope that the next generation will inherit a more fair and equal society. The applause was thunderous. People wiped away tears. Students furiously took notes, knowing they were witnessing something historic. My message to everyone watching this story is simple. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's prejudices. Your dignity isn't dependent on someone else's approval. She paused for emphasis. And if you witness injustice, speak up. Record it. Report it. Support the victims. Because silence in the face of wrong is complicity. Marcus joined her on stage, taking her hand gently. Together, we can create a world where everyone is treated with respect, regardless of their race, their gender, their economic status, or their apparent power. Kesha looked directly into the camera, recording the event. I want to ask you something. Have you ever stayed silent when you witnessed injustice? Have you ever made assumptions about someone based on their appearance? Have you ever used whatever power you have to lift others up instead of tear them down? The questions hung in the air, challenging every viewer. Share this story if you believe that dignity and respect are basic human rights. Comment below about times you've witnessed bias or discrimination. Subscribe to stay updated on our continued fight for justice and equality. Marcus stepped forward. Because when good people stand together against injustice, we don't just change individual lives. We change the entire system. Kesha smiled, her hand on her growing belly. Officer Matthews thought he was destroying a powerless woman. Instead, he sparked a movement. That's the real power of truth. The camera slowly panned the standing ovation as the couple left the stage, hand in hand, ready to welcome their daughter into a slightly more just world.